My name is Tanya Shortridge, and I was 32 the night the house finally said the quiet part out loud. We were doing what we always did when I came home, pretending nothing was wrong. The table was dressed like a peace treaty. My mom's rosemary chicken, the good plates that only appear on holidays, cloth napkins folded into precise fans. Dad poured himself another glass of red and found his favorite script. "You know, your sister really figured it out," he said, raising the glass toward the hallway where footsteps should have been. "Helena is the one with the instinct, the ambition." He smiled like it was a compliment to all of us. I felt the line lodge beneath my ribs. It's a line I grew up with. Some girls collect bracelets. I collected silences. Evan, my boyfriend, wasn't there. He'd wanted to come, but I told him this was a quick visit, just dinner. He'd texted me a heart and a reminder to breathe. I tucked my phone under my thigh and did exactly that. "I'm happy for Helena," I said. The words came out smooth, practiced, like a language I'd once been fluent in. Mom scooped potatoes onto my plate, and the steam fogged my glasses. She looked tired, from the kind of tired no amount of sleep fixes. Dad chuckled. "All on her own, too," he added, a shovel of words landing where he wanted them. He didn't say "unlike you." He didn't have to. The sentence hovered, invisible but heavy. Something sharp moved inside me. Not anger, not exactly. More like the relief of a splinter working its way to the surface. I could have swallowed it again the way I always do. I could have smiled, changed the topic, asked for the salt. I surprised even myself. "If that's true," I said, leaning back in my chair, "then I'll stop sending you money. It can be her problem now." The room went still. The TV in the living room kept murmuring. Some game show audience clapping for a stranger's prize. Mom's hand froze over the serving spoon. Dad lowered his glass. "What money?" he asked, finally truly looking at me. "You haven't sent us a single cent." "Cent," he said, "cent." The mispronunciation landed like a clang. I looked from one parent to the other. They were confused in identical ways, like twins separated by 28 years and 1,000 disappointments. "I've been sending 5,000 a month since last April," I said. I heard how I sounded, clinical, like reading a lab result. "You both said you don't trust online banking, so I wired it to Helena. She promised to deliver it to you in cash or checks." Mom's fork touched the plate very carefully, the way you put down a glass sculpture you realize isn't yours. She blinked once, twice, like she was trying to read a sign through rain. Dad searched my face for the punchline. "You mean," he said slowly, "you sent that to Helena?" "At the first of every month," I said. Screenshots, confirmations, everything. A hallway shadow moved, and there she was, Helena. Older by 2 years, and always somehow younger in how she needed the room to bend toward her. She wore a black blouse, gold hoops, and a lipstick shade that looked expensive. One hand hovered near her wine glass, the other tightened at her side. Mom and Dad turned to her at the exact same time, a dance they'd mastered through decades of parenting. "Did you bring us?" Mom started, and then didn't finish because the end of that question was a cliff she wasn't ready to look over. Helena didn't sit. Color rose to her cheeks in slow motion. She said, and the word was a thread that snapped the second it touched air. Dad's voice was steady in the way a bridge is steady right before a truck goes over weight. "Where did the money go, Helena?" She swallowed. There are expenses. You don't understand." "What expenses?" I asked. "What kind of expenses take 60,000 in under a year and leave nothing to show?" Her eyes slid to me with something like accusation, like I'd lit the house on fire by turning on a lamp. "Don't act innocent, Tanya. You sent it late a few times. I had to juggle." "I sent it on the 1st, every month." I kept my voice low. It's a skill you learn when you're the one who doesn't get believed unless you sound like a sworn statement. Dad's face had gone white. He aged in front of me. 10 years, in 5 breaths. "We never saw any of it," he said. "Not once." Helena's shoulders rose and fell. She grabbed the back of a chair but didn't sit, like sitting would be surrender. "It's invested." "In what?" I asked. "A startup," she said. "A friend's company. It's big. It's going to be—" She searched for a word and found a billboard instead. "Scalable." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because the word looked ridiculous in our kitchen, in a room that smelled like rosemary and history and a mortgage payment we'd been trying to keep ahead of. Mom's voice arrived, soft and breaking. "We skipped our payment last November," she said, eyes on her folded napkin. "We thought it was okay because we knew you'd never let us sink, Tanya. We thought Helena was telling the truth when she said you were too busy, that you would help when you could." I felt the floor tilt. The shame that followed was its own geometry. How a straight line turns to a corner, turns to a dead end. I had been sending money into a dark room and congratulating myself for lighting it. That's enough, Helena snapped, with a sudden brightness that looked like panic wearing perfume. You're making this bigger than it is. The money is part of a long-term strategy. Dad set his glass down so gently the sound made me want to cry. What strategy? Silence. It swelled until it became the only thing in the room anyone could hear. There are moments you look back on and realize your life was a hallway with doors you didn't even know were there. This was one of them. I saw a door called Denial and another called Proof, and I was tired of living in the hallway. Who is he? I asked. Helena blinked. Who is who? The friend you're investing with. A pause, then. Mason, she said. A small word that somehow cast a long shadow. Mason Vale. Dad repeated the name like he was trying it on and found it didn't fit. And Mr. Vale has what? Financial statements? Contracts? Anything? Helena's jaw set. She did what she always does when cornered. She grew taller without moving. He's building an app. It's not public yet, but he believes in me. He thinks I'm brilliant. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded, with all the times we had believed in Helena because it was easier than the alternative, with all the meals where Dad clinked a glass to her future and Mom scraped plates into the sink, with every minute I transferred $5,000 and did not ask where it went. I don't know what would have happened if the oven timer hadn't gone off then, shrill and oddly humane. The sound startled us all back into our bodies. Mom moved automatically, opening the door, heat blooming into the room like a sudden truth. Helena grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm not doing this, she said, the sentence trembling, even as she tried to make it stand. She moved toward the hallway. Helena, Dad said, and the way he said her name could have stopped a river. She didn't stop. She didn't put on her coat. She didn't take a slice of the rosemary chicken she'd once said was her favorite comfort. She just walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped into the dark January air. The door shut with the softest click I've ever heard, and still it sounded like a gavel. We sat there for a long time, the three of us, and the emptiness she left behind. The potatoes cooled. The wine went undrunk. The house made the small settling noises it makes in winter, wood adjusting to cold, pipes remembering their purpose. Dad stared at the place where she'd been standing, like if he just watched long enough she would reappear. Mom pressed her fingertips together and whispered, I don't understand. I should have checked, I said. The words felt heavier than the money had. I should have asked for proof. I just trusted. Dad stood abruptly, chair scraping the tile. Tomorrow, he said, moving toward the hall with a steadiness that was new. I'm going to the bank. No one slept much that night. I lay in my old room staring at the ceiling, tracing the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck there when I was 16. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, I heard the front door creak. I sat up, listening. But there were no footsteps, no voice, only the wind pushing at the eaves like it wanted in. I thought, at least it's over. The truth is out. We can fix this. If I'd been honest with myself, I would have admitted what I felt humming under my skin. A different kind of knowledge. Not the clean kind that gives answers. The other kind that offers warning. I didn't have the language for it yet, but later I would. People who live on secrets don't come clean because you turn on the lights. They find another shadow. In the morning, the house woke slowly. Mom moved through the kitchen with a mug she never drank from. Dad's office door clicked shut, then opened again. We made small talk about weather and groceries and a show none of us actually watched. Dad reached for his coat. Before he could put it on, the doorbell rang. Mom looked up, surprised. We weren't expecting anyone. Dad and I exchanged a glance that felt like a question neither of us knew how to ask. I went to the door and pulled it open. A man stood on the porch, early 30s, jeans, a hoodie zipped halfway, the kind of smile you practice in a mirror to make sure it looks effortless. You must be Tanya, he said, like we were meeting in line at a coffee shop. I'm Mason. And the part of me that had felt the hum all night went very, very quiet, the way a room does right before the first note of a symphony. Helena here? He asked, peering past me into the warmth of the house. I didn't move. She's not, I said. Shame, he replied easily, like we were talking about missing a bus. I'm here to clear up a misunderstanding. Behind me, I heard Dad's footsteps. He came to stand at my shoulder, and for once I didn't feel like the child being protected. I felt like the witness who'd finally been called to the stand. Mason's eyes flicked between us, and his smile held. He reached for the backpack slung over one shoulder. I brought something to show you, he said. just to prove we're on the same page. I thought of pages, bank statements, transfer confirmations, a year's worth of trusting a bridge that couldn't bear weight. I didn't know what he would pull out. I only knew the story we'd told ourselves had ended last night. A different one was beginning. Mason stood on our porch like he belonged in the story already written, and I hated how calm he was. His eyes were the color of trust, just the right shade of sincerity to fool someone desperate to believe. Dad's voice dropped into that deep, deliberate tone he used when things were about to go wrong. Helena isn't here. What do you need to clear up? Mason smiled, unbothered. There's been a misunderstanding about the money. She told me it came from her savings, not you. I didn't want any bad blood between families. Families. The word hit like a small slap. I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway. And what exactly do you do? I'm a founder, he said easily. We're building an app that connects local artisans with... Stop, Dad cut in. Do you have proof of this company? Anything official? Mason chuckled softly. Mr. Shortridge, you can't rush innovation. But I understand. Let me show you. He unzipped his backpack and pulled out a thin folder. Inside were 5 glossy printouts, a mock-up of an app home screen, a few buzzwords, scalable platform, future of commerce, beta phase. No addresses, no names, no registered trademarks, just smoke-wearing lipstick. Dad flipped through the pages without sitting down. This is your empire? Mason's smile didn't fade. Every big thing starts small. Before I could respond, Mom's voice drifted from behind us. Tanya, who is it? She appeared in the hallway, apron still on, hands dusted with flour. Her eyes found Mason and went wide. Oh, she whispered. You're the friend. Mason turned on his charm so fast it was like flipping a light. You must be Mrs. Shortridge. It's an honor. Mom nodded, uncertain. Helena told us about you. I'm sure she did, he said, still smiling. Dad stepped forward. If you've taken money from my daughter under false pretenses... I haven't taken anything she didn't offer, sir, Mason interrupted smoothly. Helena believes in what we're doing. She's not some naive girl. She's a partner. That word, partner, made something in me snap. You mean she's funding you, I said, and lying to her family about it. Mason tilted his head slightly, studying me. You don't like me very much, do you, Tanya? I don't like seeing my parents' mortgage money vanish into vapor. His expression softened, almost sympathetic. You think I'm using her, but Helena's the one who insisted. She wanted to be part of something meaningful. Dad's patience evaporated. Get off my porch. Mason hesitated for a second, then nodded politely. I understand. I'll tell her you stopped by. As he turned to leave, a white sedan pulled into the driveway. Helena stepped out, sunglasses on, though the sky was overcast. She froze when she saw us all standing there. Tanya, what are you doing? She snapped. Mason showed up, I said. Said he wanted to clear things up. Her face tightened. You had no right to talk to him without me. He had no right to take money meant for our parents. She walked past me, straight to him, touching his arm like a shield. Let's go. Mom's voice broke through the tension, trembling but firm. Helena, where did the money go? Helena didn't answer. She looked at Mason, then at me. You don't get it. None of you do. Then, quietly, but with that same defiance she wore like perfume, I'm leaving with him. Dad's jaw clenched. If you walk out that door, Helena, don't come back until you tell the truth. She hesitated just long enough to make us think she might stop. Then she left anyway. The car door slammed, and the sound lingered in the cold air like an echo of every mistake we'd ever enabled. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt hollow, like the air had been vacuumed out of it. I sat in the kitchen with the glow of my laptop, scrolling through old transfers, dates, and emails. The numbers blurred. $5,000 every month. It had felt responsible then. Now it felt like I'd been complicit. Mom sat across from me with her mug again, cold coffee untouched. Did she really leave with him? She did. Where do you think she went? I didn't answer. My screen showed Helena's Instagram. A photo from 2 days ago. Wine glasses, city lights, the caption, Building Dreams with my favorite person. I wanted to scream. The next morning, the bank confirmed what we already suspected. Our parents' mortgage was behind again. Helena had told them she'd handled it. Around 9 that night, headlights swept across the front yard. The sound of heels on tile followed. Helena walked in like nothing had happened. Fresh makeup, hair done, the scent of expensive perfume cutting through the tension. Mom's relief was immediate, almost foolish. You're home. Helena smiled faintly. Of course, I live here, don't I? Dad's voice cut through the moment. Where's the money? She froze, eyes flicking toward me. I told you, it's tied up in an investment. What kind of investment? I asked. It's a startup, Mason's company. What's the company called? She hesitated. It's still in stealth mode. Meaning it doesn't exist, I said. Meaning it's not public yet, she shot back. You wouldn't understand. Mom took a slow breath. Helena, you've been lying to us. No, she said quickly. I've been protecting us. This will pay off, you'll see. Mason just needs time. Dad slammed his palm on the table. Time? You've been doing this for almost 2 years. Helena flinched, tears glinting but not falling. He believes in me. Nobody else ever did. That line landed somewhere deep. Because once, years ago, she could have said the same about me. But now, it sounded like a script she'd memorized from him. I stepped forward quieter. Do you even know who he really is? Don't you dare judge him, she whispered, trembling. You don't know what we've been through. The next morning, we found out more than we wanted. Around 11, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find a woman about my age, messy ponytail, toddler on her hip. She asked, Is Mason here? The name hit like cold water. He doesn't live here. She frowned. I thought he was staying with Helena. I blinked. You know him? The woman gave a bitter laugh. Know him? He's my kid's father, and he owes me 3 years of child support. The world went silent. I showed her a picture of Helena and Mason from social media. She nodded. That's him. Guess I'm not the only one he's using. When she left, I stood at the door for a long time, unable to move. Then I turned back into the house. Mom was in the kitchen, Dad in his office. I said, He has a child. He's been lying about everything. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Oh, Helena. Dad stood, his face ashen. We're not waiting anymore. That evening, Helena came home again, this time with mascara streaked across her cheeks and a cracked phone in her hand. She dropped it on the counter. You were right, she whispered. He's gone. Her voice broke. He left last night after a fight. I found his tablet, messages to other women. He never loved me. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't even move. I just stood there, watching the collapse of a lie that had been built with my money and her hope. How much did you give him? Dad asked. Helena shook her head. I don't know. 80,000? Maybe more. Plus cards. A car lease. The numbers made my stomach turn. I stepped closer. He used you, Helena. She nodded slowly, tears spilling now. And I let him. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Mom whispered, Then it's time to stop letting him. Helena looked up, broken but not empty. What do you mean? Dad's voice was firm. We're going to the police. Dad, no, please. Mom touched her shoulder. If you don't stand up now, he wins twice. And for the first time in years, Helena didn't argue. She just nodded once and whispered, Okay. That night, as I gathered the receipts, the texts, the screenshots, I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about money. It was about the cost of believing someone more than you believed yourself. And Helena wasn't the only one who'd done that. When you decide to take back control of your life, you expect relief. But what came next felt more like walking barefoot through broken glass. The morning after Helena agreed to go to the police, the house was so still you could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Mom sat at the kitchen table with her rosary, whispering to herself. Dad was in the living room, going through bank statements and muttering dates like prayers. Helena hadn't come downstairs. Her door had stayed shut since dawn. I was compiling every transfer I'd made, $5,000, every month, always to her account, and labeling each with dates. My laptop screen glowed cold blue in the dim light. We need documentation, Dad said, voice gravelly. No more talking, just proof. He was right. But even as we worked, part of me wondered if Helena would actually follow through with the report. She had said okay last night, but I'd seen that look before, her trying to hold her world together with words that wouldn't last until morning. At 9:58 a.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't ready for company. None of us were. Mom frowned. Maybe it's the police already? Dad looked up from his paperwork. Too soon. When I opened the door, the world tilted slightly. It was Mason. He was dressed the same as before. Jeans, hoodie, confident smirk. But there was something new in his eyes. A kind of nervous calculation. Tanya, he said lightly, like we were friends. Good morning. I didn't answer. You need to leave. Not until I talk to Helena, he said. She's not answering her phone. Because she doesn't want to talk to you. He held up his hands, palms out. Look, I know how this looks. But she misunderstood a few things. Dad appeared beside me, silent for a moment before saying, The only misunderstanding is you thinking you can walk into my home. Mason smirked. Mr. Shortridge, I respect your concern, but Helena and I are partners. This is between us. I felt the word partner hit my stomach like a stone. Dad's tone sharpened. She's not your partner. She's our daughter. You've conned her. I didn't con anyone, Mason said smoothly. She invested because she believed in the project. Then show us, I said. Show us what she's paying for. He looked straight at me and smiled like he'd been waiting for the invitation. Gladly. He unzipped his backpack again and took out a different folder, thicker this time, maybe an inch of printed papers. He placed it on the coffee table as if it were evidence of his genius. Everything you need to see. Dad flipped through the pages. Buzzwords, random spreadsheets, diagrams with no sources. The company name changed on every other document. Vailtech, Vision, M2 Systems. None of it looked real. I leaned closer, scanning a so-called financial projection that looked copied from a template. You expect anyone to believe this? Mason shrugged. It's a startup. You have to imagine the potential. Dad threw the folder down. I imagine prison. That made Mason's smile fade for the first time. His jaw tightened. You think I'm scared of lawyers? You have no case. Fraud, identity theft, emotional manipulation. I counted the words on my fingers. You took over $80,000 from my sister and left her with debt and a broken credit score. I think that's more than a case. Mason took a slow breath. You don't know the full story, Tanya. Then enlighten me. She was the one who offered, he said quickly. She said she wanted to prove something to you, to your dad, to show she could succeed where you... Stop! My voice cracked, but I didn't care. You don't get to weaponize our family against us. His lips curled slightly. Guess that's a touchy subject. Behind me, I heard a sharp inhale. Helena was on the staircase, pale as the wall behind her. Mason, she whispered. He turned toward her, face softening instantly. There you are. I came to fix this. Fix what? She asked. The misunderstanding, he said gently. Your family doesn't get what we're building. They think you've been tricked, but you know the truth. You believe in me. Tears welled in her eyes. I did. He took a step toward her. You still do. Dad moved forward, blocking his path. You're leaving. Mason's smile returned, but his voice dropped. You can't keep her here. She's not a child. Helena took another shaky breath, and then the words came out that made the air crack open. Then I'm leaving with him. Mom gasped. Helena, please. Helena's eyes darted around, frantic but determined. You don't understand. He's all I have left. He can fix everything. No, I said softly. He's what broke it. She didn't listen. She brushed past Dad, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door with Mason right behind her. The sound of the car engine faded down the street, and Mom sank into a chair, trembling. Dad's hands shook as he poured himself a glass of water. She'll see soon enough, he said, his voice more hope than belief. But I didn't trust time to fix this, not anymore. That night I found them. Evan came over after work, his quiet steadiness grounding me. You said you were going to track him, he reminded me. I already started. I turned the laptop toward him. I'd followed every digital breadcrumb I could. Helena's transfers, Mason's social media, a few shell companies registered under vague names. None had a legitimate address. But there was one lead, a tagged location from a month ago, an apartment complex near the industrial district. Evan frowned. You're not thinking of going alone, are you? I won't step inside, I lied. He sighed. Tanya. But I was already grabbing my keys. The building looked like a forgotten promise. Peeling paint, mailboxes crammed with flyers, and one flickering hallway light that blinked like a warning. I found the unit number from the tag, 2B. I knocked once, twice. A tired-looking woman opened the door, holding a toddler with a juice stain on his shirt. Her eyes narrowed. If you're here for Mason, you're wasting your time. My throat went dry. You know him? Know him? He's my kid's father, and he's 2 months late on child support. It was like hearing an explosion through glass. Distant, sharp, and too clear to deny. I showed her a photo of Helena and Mason. This woman, he's with her now. The woman barked out a laugh that was more pain than humor. Of course he is. There's always someone new to pay his bills. Do you know where he is? Last I heard, he's been crashing at some Airbnb downtown. Tell your friend to change her cards before he drains those too. She shut the door before I could say another word. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring through the windshield. When I walked into the kitchen, Mom was sitting there with a single lamp on, eyes swollen from crying. Dad was on the phone with a lawyer friend. I told them everything. And for the first time in days, Dad didn't shout. He just whispered, "Then we go after him. No more talking. That night, Helena came back. No makeup, eyes red, phone shattered in her hand. She whispered, "You were right." We stood frozen. "He left," she said. "After a fight. I found his tablet, messages to other women. He laughed about me, about all of it." She looked at me then, face crumbling. I thought I was helping him. I thought he loved me. I reached out, finally, and pulled her into a hug she didn't resist. He doesn't get the last word. Dad's voice came from the doorway, steady and sure. "Tomorrow we file everything. No more secrets." Helena nodded against my shoulder, her voice small. "Okay." But even as I held her, I couldn't help thinking. Every time she said okay, she meant something different. And deep down, I feared this wasn't the end, only the moment before the storm truly broke. The next morning was a blur of gray light and paperwork. I barely slept. Mom brewed coffee, none of us drank, and Dad sat at the dining table surrounded by manila folders and printouts like a general preparing for battle. Helena came down late, wrapped in a robe, eyes hollow. Her voice was small, like it had forgotten how to carry sound. "Do we really have to go to the police?" Dad didn't look up from the files. "Yes. I don't want this to get out. My friends, people at work." Mom cut her off gently. "Sweetheart, the truth can't humiliate you. Only lies can." Helena flinched, and I felt a flicker of pity. She'd built her identity around being the brilliant one, the unstoppable one. Now, she was a woman picking through the ashes of her own choices. Dad handed her a pen. "We'll start with a statement." Helena stared at it for a long time before taking it. Her hand trembled as she signed. That moment, watching her name appear in ink, was the first time I believed she might actually climb out of the mess. At the police station, the detective listened carefully, jotting notes. When Helena mentioned Mason's name, he nodded slowly. "Vale, Mason Vale. We've seen it before." My stomach dropped. "Before?" He sighed. "A few complaints, all financial, nothing stuck yet. The guy's slippery." Dad's jaw tightened. "Then let's make this one stick." The detective gave us his card. "Send every document you have. Emails, text messages, bank transfers. If there's a pattern, we'll find it." Helena's hands stayed folded in her lap. She didn't say a word the whole way home. Back at the house, I spread everything on the table. Screenshots, transaction records, receipts. The evidence looked endless. Mom's voice trembled as she read through them. $80,000. And new credit cards in her name. I shook my head. He set up fake invoices, payments through fake companies. He used her trust like a password. Helena sat quietly, watching me work. I half expected her to break down again, but she didn't. She just whispered, "He told me I was his investor, that I made him feel less alone." The sadness in her voice didn't sound like regret. It sounded like grief for a version of herself that had died. "You're not the first person he's done this to," I said gently. "But you might be the one who stops him." That made her look up. "You really think they'll catch him?" Dad answered before I could. "If he's still in Ohio, they will." The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Calls with the detective, meetings with a lawyer, nights of scrolling through Mason's digital trail. Helena didn't leave the house. She stayed in the guest room, the curtains always half drawn. Once, I walked past and saw her sitting on the floor surrounded by torn-up photos. Her and Mason smiling on rooftops, by the lake, holding champagne flutes. Each one had a rip through the middle. When she saw me at the door, she didn't hide the mess. She just said, "I wanted to remember what it looked like when I didn't know." That night, she came into my room quietly. "Tanya," she said, "you were always the responsible one, the one everyone trusted. I used to hate that." I looked up from my laptop. "Helena." She shook her head. "No, let me say it. I thought you had it easy. But now I see. You were just the only one who didn't run from the truth." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry." The words were soft, but they didn't sound performative this time. They sounded earned. I nodded, not trusting my own voice. "Let's just fix this, together." 2 days later, we got the call. Mason had been found, living with another woman in Dayton. The police had arrested him that morning at a hotel. When the detective told us, Helena's breath hitched. "He's really in custody?" "Yes, ma'am. We've seized his laptop and phone. There's evidence of multiple victims." Mom started crying quietly. Dad closed his eyes and exhaled. I didn't feel victory, just relief mixed with exhaustion. But that relief didn't last long. That evening, the detective called back. "We need your family at the station again. You'll want to see this." When we arrived, the detective laid out printed screenshots, messages between Mason and 5 women. Each thread was the same: promises, transfers, partnerships. Every woman thought she was helping him build a future. One of them was the woman with the toddler. Another was someone from out of state. One of them even used the same phrase as Helena had. He just needs more time. Helena covered her mouth, staring down at the pages. He said those exact words to me, every single one. The detective nodded. He recycles people like business models. But with your cooperation, he'll finally be charged with fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Dad's voice was calm but cold. Good. When we got home that night, Helena didn't speak. She went straight upstairs. I thought she might cry again, but she didn't. Instead, I heard the sound of drawers opening, papers being shuffled. An hour later, she came downstairs carrying a shoebox. Inside were receipts, love letters, even a ring Mason had given her. I don't want any of this, she said. You burn it. Mom took her hand gently. You sure? Helena nodded. It doesn't mean anything now. We stood in the backyard as the flames caught. The smoke curled into the cold air, carrying away the pieces of a story that had fooled all of us. When it was over, she whispered, He took so much from me. I looked at her. Then make sure he never gets another inch. Weeks later, the trial began. Mason pleaded not guilty at first, then broke after the evidence poured in. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, no parole for the first 18 months. The restitution order included Helena's lost funds and emotional damages, but we knew we'd never see most of that money again. Still, something about the verdict made the air lighter in the courtroom. Helena squeezed my hand and whispered, It's over. But as we walked out, I realized it wasn't just over for her. It was over for all of us. The version of our family that looked perfect from the outside had finally burned down, and now we'd have to decide what to build in its place. The weeks after Mason's sentencing passed like a strange kind of quiet. The house felt different, lighter in some corners, heavier in others. The shadows were gone, but so was the noise that used to fill every silence. Helena moved back into her old room. Gone were the designer clothes, the constant perfume, the glittering phone cases. Now it was plain sweatshirts, hair tied back, bare face. Sometimes I'd find her sitting at the kitchen table helping Mom peel potatoes or folding laundry with the TV humming softly in the background. She didn't talk much, but when she did, it wasn't about Mason. It was about rebuilding. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? She asked one morning, staring into her coffee. They already have, I said. Now you just have to forgive yourself. Her smile was small but real. That's the hard part. It wasn't easy for Mom and Dad either. Dad confessed one night while he was stacking dishes. I think we made her this way. We thought protecting her was love. Turns out it was just fear of losing her. I looked at him, really looked. For the first time in years, his shoulders didn't seem as square, his voice not as absolute. You did what you thought was right, I said, but you don't have to keep carrying her choices. He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for someone to say that out loud. Mason's trial stretched over 3 long days. The courtroom smelled like paper and tension. I sat next to Helena as she testified, her voice trembling at first, then steadying as she read out the text messages he'd sent her. I thought I was helping him, she said, but really I was just giving him my life one transfer at a time. Mason sat across from her, expression blank. No charm, no smirk, just emptiness. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Helena didn't cheer or cry. She just exhaled, like a weight she'd been carrying for 2 years, finally dropped to the floor. Outside the courthouse, the winter air bit at our faces. Mom hugged her so tight, Helena almost couldn't breathe. Dad placed a hand on her shoulder and said, You stood up. That matters more than what he took. Helena nodded, whispering, I just want to move forward. She did. In the months that followed, she sold her car, canceled every credit card, and got a modest job as an office assistant. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. She started keeping a notebook, budget sheets, savings goals, reminders like check statements weekly, written in bold pen. Sometimes I'd catch her humming while doing dishes, and it felt surreal. The same woman who once lived for rooftop parties now smiled over burnt toast. One afternoon, I found her sitting in the garden, dirt on her jeans, planting herbs with Mom. She looked up at me and said, You know what's funny? I used to think success was being seen. Now I think it's just being at peace. When spring came, I told them I was moving to Seattle, a new job offer, project management at an architecture firm. It felt like the right time to start over, too. The morning I left, the house smelled like coffee and detergent. Mom folded laundry at the counter, Dad shuffled into the kitchen with his newspaper, and Helena came down the stairs in an oversized sweatshirt. You're really leaving today, she said quietly. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. It's time. She hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Don't worry, it's not money, just something I wanted you to have. Inside was a photo of us as kids, me holding her hand at the county fair, both of us grinning through missing teeth. On the back, she'd written in messy cursive, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." I blinked hard. You didn't have to. I did, she interrupted softly. You could have walked away, but you didn't. You didn't save me for me. You did it for Mom and Dad, but somewhere along the way, you gave me a reason to save myself. I hugged her, really hugged her. For the first time, there was no guilt, no resentment, no noise between us, just the warmth of two sisters who had finally stopped trying to be right and started trying to be whole. As I drove toward the airport, Dad sat in the passenger seat beside me, quiet until we hit the highway. You know, he said, spoiling Helena wasn't protection. It was convenience. It's easier to give than to hold someone accountable. I smiled faintly. We all learned that the hard way. He nodded, eyes on the road. But we fixed it. Maybe not perfectly, but we fixed it. Outside, the sun was just beginning to rise, washing the sky in gold and pale blue. I pulled into the drop-off lane, the last few minutes heavy with goodbye. Dad squeezed my hand. Take care of yourself, Tanya. I will, he smiled. You already are. In the terminal, as I waited to board, I caught my reflection in the glass. Tired but lighter somehow. Behind me, people hurried with their luggage, chasing destinations I'd never know. I thought about Helena at home, Mom's soft humming in the kitchen, Dad's slippers shuffling across the floor. And I thought about Mason, somewhere behind bars, the echoes of his charm bouncing off walls that no longer listened. For a moment, I closed my eyes and breathed. People always talk about debts. Money, favors, second chances, but not all debts are financial. Some are emotional, some are lessons. And some, like ours, can only be repaid with change.